Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to New York Comic-Con 2015. We are live here from the Twitch stage, brought to you by Courtyard. And, we're about to wrap with day 4. We still got a few more things coming at you live from the stage. But I'm really excited about our next guest. I've never actually had the opportunity to interview this individual on a Twitch stream, although we've had some great conversations. So it's really my pleasure to bring to the stage Richard Garriott to talk a little bit about the future of gaming.
Excellent. Glad to be here with you. Very excited.
Thank you so much for taking some time out. I guess first of all, how's Comic-Con been for you?
Fantastic, and crowded as usual, and but just an amazing event. I've lived part-time up here in New York now for 3 years and been coming here to this Comic-Con during that period, and it's just an amazing show. It's really fantastic. Yeah,
they've done a great job this year. It's no different. I love the passion and just of all the fans out here. Everyone's been great. So thank you guys so much. Before we go and talk about the future of gaming, you have an amazing past. You created by far my favorite video game of all time, Ultima Online, and I mean really the Ultima series that led up to that. You continue to sort of forge forward with A Shroud of the Avatar, which is going to be hitting soon, and people already getting deep into that game. Of course, you founded Origin Systems, was later sold to EA. Really, the whole the term MMORPG really it came from you. So I mean, I just want to say first off, thank you for all the great things you've already done.
And to me, there's it's interesting that as the industry has grown down through the years, I got in at the age of 19, which is sort of a customary average year to get in, except that when I got in, there was no one older than me in it. Right. And so every year as I get older, there's new 19-year-olds that come in, and so I've been perpetually the oldest guy. and now at 54, that actually means something. But being around all that time is, first of all, it has let me participate in some of the really formative periods of the gaming industry. You already mentioned the term MMORPG.
Right.
One of the other things I'm proud of is the word avatar. Which, even though it had a dictionary definition, it was not applied to games. It's really a religious word that I use to imply that this is you in that character. You're not playing some alter ego like Conan. But since I was writing games about virtues, I wanted to. You're the one responsible, so it's your avatar.
Exactly.
And now that, of course, is ubiquitous in games. That one's stuck.
That's great. I mean, we often talk about sort of how genre shifts change and innovations that occur in gaming. But really, you've been at the core of one of the largest in the last several years, because obviously MMORPGs. That was the summer that I remember, there was black before that, just darkness before, it was a different experience. And you brought that to life. But, I mean, that's a pretty amazing legacy to kind of carry.
No, I agree. And by the way, I should stop immediately and give credit to one of my business partners, a guy named Star Long, who still works with me. He's still the executive producer and director, really, on Shroud of the Avatar.
Right.
And it was he and I who, back at Origin, even before EA and through the period of EA, every year we'd sit down and go, is the market yet ready for a massively multiplayer game? And during the dial-up bulletin board era, people were paying by the hour, and even the Genie Air Warriors or other things that were super popular for their day had 15,000 people total, and that would not sustain a multi-million-dollar game development effort.
Of course, right.
And as soon as we saw the internet come into existence, we knew this was the time. And for 3 separate cycles, we went back to EA and said, "This is the time. We need to make. We called it Multima at the time, multiplayer. We need to make Multima now." And 3 times in a row, we were actually shot down because there was no market study to support its existence.
No. Of course.
And finally, on the 3rd time through, we just said, "Look, we're not leaving the room without you saying yes." And we literally did the childish stomp your feet but they literally couldn't stop us. We just said, literally, that's all we're going to do. You just take it or leave it. And begrudgingly, they said, well, we'll give you a couple $100,000 to prove it to us. And the beta that we created with that first couple $100,000, the adoption rate was faster than any other PC game that they'd ever made or we had ever made, and it went on to be the best-selling PC game that Origin or EA ever did up to that point in time.
So again, just kind of amazing foundation to kick this off, because as we are here now, the 21st century, 2015, obviously graphics are getting better. We've got new platforms out. You know, streaming is a thing, and the world of gaming is changing a lot. So.
Well, except let me give you a little perspective on that. I mean, the reason why I wanted to come here and talk about the future of gaming, the reason why I was excited to come talk about it, is having lived through basically every era that there has been. I find this interesting cycle that I would like to argue for that exists, that we're finally at the point of breaking out of in an important way. And what that cycle is that, you know, the game that inspired me to make my first games was called Escape. It was basically draw a maze and run around in it and get out. And that was even before you could shoot each other. So it wasn't even it was pre-first-person shooter. But every time there's a technological advancement, you can make a really great first-person shooter, right?
Right.
You know, if you go from just a computer to having a hard drive where you can store art for the mapping on the walls, you get a CD-ROM to get even more data. You get the internet so you can play multiplayer. You get 3D graphical hardware to where now you can render much deeper scene. Every one of those that I just mentioned, the best-selling game right after that invention was a very simple first-person shooter. And during the stable periods of time, people go, well, to be better than that first-person shooter, I got to make something deeper. And then every time you get those big turnovers, it goes back to the simple case. And for people who like deep gameplay like I do, our games sell the best during the stable periods, and then everything goes to first-person shooters during the revolutions. And but we finally have enough computing power today to where you don't need to rewrite your core technology every game. You can start buying pieces off the shelf of the, what in television world would be called the camera, and film and actors and all the other parts and pieces you can now buy. But we're still just scratching the surface in some really important areas. Like AI is still not that great.
Yeah.
We hand animate everything we make,
Right.
Versus have IK all the time, or NPCs naturally face tracking where their consciousness tells them to. Those are things that are still yet to come and imply a lot of work we have to do. But I'm excited about the point we're at right now because we're starting to do that.
Let me kick off the discussion based off of what you just said, because obviously I could like a world where it's like, so procedurally generate these animations based off of the form factor or the skeleton of a character, because a lot of the challenges, like we were talking about earlier, was that you could potentially create something, but then the rules of how that actually animated object interacts with the world become a part of it as well. Now, I know a game that many people are excited about, although the details of it have been, slowly given to us, is No Man's Sky, which seems to kind of maybe be trying to push exactly what you're talking about a little bit further.
Well, the nice thing about the again, this period of time is that even if there is another major revolution technologically, we now have enough excess power that people can choose their battles and say, hey, we all know you can make a beautiful first-person shooter as a base. Now you go beyond that. How do I want to deepen that experience? Is it in the visceral aspects of looking around the world in detail and picking up small objects like rings off of tables, or having the creatures, you think about just a simple spider. What happens when it gets on a slope? Well, if you just do the average slope, they end up, walking half in the air and these other mistakes. And so you can beat that with IK engines. That just chows on a fair bit of processing power still. And so you have to choose your battles. Am I going to do really great smoke effects, or am I going to do really great AI? Am I going to really great IK? But eventually, we're going to get to the point where you can have it all through the standard through a reality engine that we can then create content within versus have to do technology.
Is that a big focus then for you guys right now, or are we still so early?
Well, for me, I'm on the content side. I mean, to me, we were talking about virtual reality in the back a little bit, and one of the things that strikes me about virtual reality is there's sort of two key parts you must have. You first have to have the physical parts of it, the audio, visual, sensory aspects that have to be perfect, or good enough.
Yeah.
But then you also have to have, why am I there? What is the compelling reason for me to be there? So, if you made a perfect VR tennis, is it really any better than physical tennis?
Right.
And maybe not. In which case, let's get out get some real exercise and go do it in the real world.
Yeah.
And so you have to go, why is it compelling there to be in this alternate reality? And that's what excites me about as a creator. Is in the early days I did compete on the technology, but at this time, it's so hard to both create the best engine and create the best content.
Right.
That I'm going to leave creating the best engine to the younger up-and-comers, and I'm going to stay focused on, why am I there?
So really, it's just more like excited about where we are in this sort of period of technology and technology evolution, that this is becoming more of a reality.
Exactly. And you think about, the nice thing about the physical reality we live in and are sitting in right now is that, every atom self-computes. Gravity, the forces of nature, it's all multi-processing down to the atomic level, literally. Yeah. And as we create virtual realities, of course, we're a long way from that level of self-computation at an atomic level.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of work for any programmers to do. There's still a ton of technology we need. We're just fortunately at that point in time now where so much of it can be bought off the shelf, and so many people, so many individual contributors are adding into that pool. You go back to even the operating system on the Apple II, where I got my start. I knew literally every line of code that that Bill Gates wrote in the original operating system. I knew it all. I knew how he structured it, why he structured it, where there were bugs in it, and we could exploit little subroutines he wrote because it was possible to know all of it.
Right.
Now there's no expert in my company that understands even the operating system at a deep level, much less all the other parts and pieces that we put together. And you never will. We never will again. And so instead we need crowdsourced effectively technology, because you've got to borrow pieces of technology from thousands and thousands and thousands of people in order to make one of these reality engines work.
Very interesting. So, Shroud the Avatar, what you're working on now, what kind of decisions have you had to make in terms of trade-offs and what you focus on and what you don't focus on with the technologies available today?
Well, the good news for us when we got started is we decided to use Unity as a base.
Right.
But by the way, there's CryEngine and the Doomquake folks. There's other equally competent engines out there. I just happen to be a particular fan of the Unity engine for its easy front end for its user, for the developer-facing tools.
Right.
And it has another advantage that we kind of discovered along the way, which is an amazing group of co-developers. Artists contributing into a place to go buy and sell and trade art, and also technology and subroutines and things that get added to it. And so for us, that's been a great trade-off, because it means people have seen in our game, flowing hair and capes and cloaks, and they all credit us with it. They're going like, "Wow, what a great job you guys did on those, flowing capes and cloaks and skirts." And we're going, "Yeah, we sure did. Thanks, community."
That's great.
And that's awesome.
And so, but that's now happening across the board, and so and that's really what it's going to require, because no project, even these games that are costing $300 million, $500 million to develop these days, no one can afford to do all that reality crafting.
Right. So this lets you focus on the good stuff you want to do anyway, right?
Exactly. And of course, we want all the flowing capes and beards and hair. We just don't want to waste a couple of years on that one feature.
Right.
We just all need you want the world that you create to act as naturally as you want. And not that every game needs to be a simulation of the physical reality we live in. Much more surreal environments are often more powerful, but you still want a consistency to whatever the reality is you're crafting. You want it to be complete, full, and rich. And no one person can do that, or no one company can do that.
Yeah,
right.
It seems like games are almost getting so big and so complex that there's a little bit of the idea that, well, maybe we should just play it safe because it's so expensive. What do you think about taking chances and really kind of go out there and trying to convince people this is a good idea?
Oh, well, I think that's actually been, we were speaking of MMOs.
Yeah.
Ultima Online sort of started the MMO era.
Mm-hmm.
The big fish today is still probably World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Right.
But EverQuest and others, and Star Wars Galaxies, and we have a number of other really big ones that have done very well in this intervening 15 years or so. Mm-hmm. But you'll notice most of the ones I just named were all in that first 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the last 10 years, there still have been a lot created.
Right.
There have been some that have cost $300 million to $500 million to make, and a lot of those have been complete disasters. And the problem with that is that, first of all, it's making people run away from the MMO genre in totality.
Right.
But a big part of the problem, in my mind, was the risk aversion of publishers has caused sort of self-inflicted injury. Because the thing that everybody says is, look, WoW's selling great, let's go make another WoW. And that, of course, we've learned, long and long ago that being a Me Too in this industry is not a successful path to success.
Yeah.
Not a good path to success.
Yeah. Doesn't always work.
Right.
Does it?
Painful lesson.
I mean, I want to ask you, and this is a bit of a biased question because, a big change in the last couple of years, too, is sort of the growth of Twitch and how, video games is being, seen and perceived. And, there's a part of me who says, man, I wish I had Twitch during the Ultima Online days, if anything, just to capture all the amazing moments that happen because they're only memories and, not necessarily archived. So I feel like in addition to sort of, changing the way that people are watching, playing, considering what they will play. You've also got sort of this history being archived as well that I'm not even sure that a lot of people think about that, but to me, I'm like, we're going to have years and years and years, the evolution of how people played games and how they changed and their opinions on them. I'm really excited about that. But, I'd just love to hear from you. How do you kind of see?
Well, you mentioned a couple of cultural impacts. I would actually, I think it's actually deeper than that. I think the impact of Twitch, I will use my 3-year-old daughter as a case study for how deep into the human experience it touches. She's not old enough to read, but she's old enough to surf.
Sure.
By icons of what she sees on screen. She'll be on YouTube or whatever, or somewhere else to, looking for things.
Sure.
And more commonly than not, she will on her own stop on some person having a real experience with some toy or video game that they are enjoying for her, and that she observes it. Right. And so I'm going, okay, well, it can't be because she's a consumer. She's not looking for something to buy. She has no concept of that buying. It must mean that this is actually speaking to you in a storytelling way. I mean, we are a storytelling species. We love to tell stories about our own experiences and share them, and yet we also like listening to each other's stories about the realities that we have. And in fact, to me, it goes back to I used to, right after UO, I would have when a lot of people were, a lot of non-gamers were going, this has to be a bad social impact. This has to be a negative social thing that people are playing through the internet versus going outside and playing. And I'm going well, not to knock going outside and playing, because I think that's really important. But if you compare that to, say, going to the movies, when you go to the movies, people don't usually go alone. They go with somebody else. And then you ignore each other while you're watching the movie.
Social, right?
And then at the end, you might talk about the movie, but you don't really need to be in the theater at the same time. And I would argue that being in an online gaming experience where you actually are doing something together, you're not in the same room, but we're literally going on a journey together. We're really accomplishing things. We're really deepening our friendship. We're relating to each other and sharing with each other real challenges and struggles that I think it's an incredibly positive bonding experience. And so, circling back again to Twitch, I really think that again, that communal storytelling and sharing is something that putting that storytelling down as close to the individual as possible, not the game creator, but the individual having the experience. I think that's really important, and that's something that Twitch provides.
That's great. I always like to hear that, and that's a very interesting perspective as well. So let's talk a little bit more about future gaming. Is there anything else that excites you, technology that you're seeing, or?
Well, we should circle back on VR, just because we were talking about that backstage, and and I would describe myself as both a huge VR fan. I really want it desperately.
Right.
And I'm a huge VR skeptic, in the sense of I have bought since the beginning of time basically every set of VR goggles that has existed back from when they were really primitive and not particularly useful. But we hooked them up to the Apple II way back, and rendered something. And it was obvious that this wouldn't work, and nobody's going to buy this. But every one since we've continued to purchase. And as excited as everybody is about VR, I think it was actually a pretty universal thread back there in the back that people are going like, we really want to be there, but we still don't yet see the killer app.
Right.
The thing that is, what is the experience that is not just a great demo, but a reason why I'd want to own it, a reason why I would want to spend, 10 hours a week in VR and wouldn't get sick. But I mean, we'll get over. There are some people I think that already cracked the illness issues, But the compelling issues is the why do I want to be there on a regular basis? What experience? It's not going to be a first-person shooter because you play in VR and I'm going to play on a mouse and keyboard. I'm going to win.
Exactly.
It's not going to be. There's a group that I'm advising called Space VR that's doing this great kind of trying to provide people the overview effect from with VR goggles. And I think will be cool. But is that going to sell? Is that going to sell VR to everybody in the country? No. And so we still have to figure out where this major piece of VR.
We were talking a little bit about it earlier too, which is the idea of like maybe there is a baby step, and that baby step is like VR experiences. Where a part for me too is as a consumer, I'm already choosing what video card am I putting, what consoles do I own, and that sort of thing. So those choices are sort of already things that as a gamer I'm presented with. Well, a whole nother challenging set of choices is like, well, here's 6 VR setups, and this one works with that one, and these two are compatible, but this doesn't have as good of a resolution. As a consumer, I feel like that becomes, maybe not for me or for like the technically or gamer savvy, but for what would I think achieve mainstream penetration is like a very difficult thing to do. Where if you start with experiences and the technology continues to build around it, then that just seems to be the logical way to go.
Yeah, and I agree. And one of these, to me, there's two models. There's the retail model, in which case you better find a killer app that everybody wants in order to buy that particular model. And I think we're still a fair distance away from that. Something I think that's happening that I personally find very exciting is a location-based entertainment version of VR. That the first one is in Salt Lake City, and it's called The Void. And you can look that one up online, and it's you wear a computer in a backpack, a custom, very high-resolution, low-latency VR headset. You carry practical set objects in your hand, lanterns, guns, billy clubs, whatever it might be, and you're moving around in a practical set. So when you go to touch the wall, you are actually touching the wall. If you touch a computer panel, you can feel the knobs and buttons on it, although the display is virtual to you.
Whoa.
And
so you're physically pressing buttons or flipping a switch.
And then you're
there. But the best part of it, you'll see in some of their videos, is you might come up to a plexiglass container that has an alien in it, and you'll feel the plexiglass, and you'll see with your VR the alien inside of it, and then you go to press a button over here on the control panel, and then real air jets shoot out at you as the thing opens up, and the alien comes out to come attack you. And so,
and that's not something I can have in my house.
But it's not something you can have in your house because they're going to spend much more than you would on a regular VR.
Right.
But it overcomes some of the other issues, like we were talking about how important it is. Most VR makers also agree you need to be able to see your hands when you're in a VR environment, which some are beginning to do. But the tactile aspects, we were talking about how hard it was in this demo that I saw about scooping up diamonds, and since you can't feel them and you can't really have the same sense of depth and feel the cup you're supposed to be putting them in, there's these little disconnects that are still important that VR doesn't yet have, but the practical set version has it. And so even though it'll be something you have to go to as a destination, to me, it's one of the first really great uses of VR.
We go to amusement parks. We've been going to arcades. We go to a lot of places. Comic-Con, right, is a partial experience too. So it just seems like that would be a great way to get people more informed and, let them experience. And I think that helps with the excitement as well. So I know both of you have tried some VR. What do you think about the idea of a location-based kind of an experience versus the...
Is that like you could have almost, instead of going to the movies, you could go to virtual reality.
Right.
Well, and this, and again, their plan for this particular one might not be this, but I used to build a lot of haunted houses, and one of my dreams of haunted houses too was that you could, if you had a 10-foot tall by similar width and height building, you could have 2 or 3 experiential entrances that you're slowly adding rooms onto one while you're destroying them, in another, so that it always changes what the experience you're having. And the nice thing about something like the Void is you can change it out. You can reskin it, or just the sets are so simple because they're just plywood, that you can change it out and update it constantly.
I'm a little bit more excited for like a HoloLens solution where it's augmented reality, and you're just taking they had the Microsoft demo a little earlier this week where like that monsters popping out of the wall, and they'd actually it would figure out where your couch is, hide behind the couch, and the AI would try and use that to its advantage. So that was really cool. I guess you still see your hands, you still see everything, and it's kind of modifying your environment. So I think that might have some other cool uses also.
I agree. Yeah, I think that
the AR versus VR, is like always interesting because I can see, again, applications on both. but certainly one is far more immersive.
Right.
But the weird thing about AR is that I feel like, especially outside gaming, that's where a lot of practical applications, where it's like, maybe you don't need precision-based movement, but it's more about displaying the information that, whether that be a measurement or looking at a blueprint or something, or practicing a surgery or something. Like, I could see that. It will be really interesting to see where it all goes.
But bottom line for me is, I just think we're in a great time right now.
We are,
because we finally have overcome that repeated cycle of having to start over with very simple first-person shooters.
Right.
I think from now on we're relatively safe from that reset.
All right.
And now we're beginning to explore the real depth and breadth of what gaming can be.
Excellent. Well, we only have about a minute left. Richard, if there's anything else you'd like to tell the fans, where can they follow you? Where should they go if they want to play Shroud?
Shroud of the Avatar. So, yeah, of course, I'd love to put in a plug for Shroud of the Avatar, shroudoftheavatar.com. It's something we've crowdsourced, which is another new deal for me, which I think has turned out crowdfunding and crowdsourcing a lot of the materials has turned out great.
Right.
And even though the game is not even technically in alpha, we've had for 20 months or so people in playing it live. So all of our backers are allowed to come in and play the game. It's up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it feels more or less like a full game now. We'll be in alpha about the end of the year and beta sometime in the spring. And probably a very short beta because basically we're beta testing now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it'll be live. So, and I'm on Twitter at Richard Garriott, all one word. But come visit, come play.
Please do.
Yeah.